welcome to the first episode of METACO Talks for 2022. We start the year with a guest who is a pioneer in blockchain in the Philippines. Catherine Casas, Head of Blockchain Center of Excellence and FVP at UnionBank in the Philippines. Cathy's been the last 20 years at the forefront of innovation at UnionBank in covering areas market risk, treasury, fixed income derivatives trading, and blockchain. And UnionBank, or UBP, has recently made news announcing further commitment to giving Filipinos secure and informed access to crypto and digital assets. And we're thrilled to learn more today about that vision and the vision behind the move. So, Cathy, it's a pleasure to welcome you to METACO Talks.
Yeah, likewise, Seamus, it's a pleasure to be here as well, and an honor to be your first episode for the year.
It's an auspicious start. Thanks for joining. You know, we often hear the criticism of crypto that the use case is just speculative, but I think I think you guys put paid to that fact that you actually have specific use cases. 3 years ago, you launched the Philippines' first stablecoin, PHX. You know, what was behind this? What is it, and what was behind it? And it'd be great to hear more about it.
Yeah, sure. The idea of PHX actually stemmed from two things. So first of all, it was our desire to, not just take heed, but to respond to the call of pushing for financial inclusion. So the fact that not everyone has access to financial products or the right financial products for their needs, it has always been one of the pressing issues here in the Philippines, and probably in most of the developing markets. So tackling it head on makes a lot of sense for us, given that it has a big potential to, enact change that leads to a more sustainable economy and society. And of course, which ultimately benefits every Filipino, every business, every bank at the end of the day. So we knew that in a country like the Philippines, with more than 7,100 islands, it's a bit difficult, and not to mention, of course, costly for these banks, for like us, to reach everyone in each of these islands. And that I think probably everyone knows this by now, that digital is really key to this. But the only way for it to really work in a way that is sustainable is to be digital from end to end. So it's front to back. It has to be fully automated. It has to be seamless. And most importantly, which I guess a lot of the digital projects have failed to do, is that it should be consummated real time. So it means the transaction is its final and cannot be disputed. So that's end to end. So here, blockchain technology has been like a key enabler, given that it supports this particular use case. So we've seen how Bitcoins enabled, of course, by blockchain technology can be transferred to anyone and anywhere in the world, and how it gets confirmed in just 10 minutes. So we took this aspect as inspiration when the bank designed one of its first projects, which the bank has done in partnership with Consensus. So which we call I2I, and which stands for island to island, institution to institution, or individual to individual. So think of it as a blockchain-based retail payment solution that allowed us to connect more than 100 rural community banks across the Philippines with each other, and connecting them into the mainstream financial network using, of course, blockchain technology at its core. So we've enabled these small rural banks who already know and understand the community, instead of us putting like branches there, and who bring a more personal homegrown touch that better service their market's needs, but who are, themselves underserved. So we've given them the ability to perform more services at a faster speed and at a lower price point to serve customers that, we can't logistically reach through this platform. Now, from this project, we saw a lot of potential in terms of having a more interoperable blockchain-based currency that could be used even outside of I2I. So the thinking was that if we were able to drive value for our rural bank community and their customers, how much more can we help the community if we had the means to expand this reach beyond these rural banks? So PHX was born. And of course, second was, launching our own stablecoin has been really part of our digital transformation strategy, or what we used to call our digitize or perish mission. So we've embarked on a digital transformation journey years ago, ahead of our peers, fully embracing what the word digital represents. So for us, as I've mentioned earlier, it was embracing it to our core. It's front to back, from tech to people. So while we, take pride in all of our digital products that are enabled by the current infrastructure, we also leapt into new technology. So, and we continue to do this. We continue to immerse ourselves and actively take part in designing and building the infrastructure of the future, where we see, of course, blockchain as now being more foundational. So PHX along with their other blockchain projects, is part of that strategy, essentially to prepare for the future of finance. Where one possible state for us is one that is token based, and where digital identities, and stable coins are said to be the main building blocks of.
Fascinating. I mean, clearly solving a real world problem. I mean, how has been the reaction of the customers, and what's been the response of, let's say, competitors in the market?
Yeah, so when we launched this product as a pilot execution, it was actually very experimental. So, our target market wasn't our existing customers actually, but it was mostly, the unbanked, of course. So number one, it was the unbanked. And second, it was the customers of the future. So we put a lot of, passion into it because we were guided by the purpose of actually what we're trying to do. For us, it helps the country. And at the same time, it helps us future-proof our bank and then our employees, ourselves, basically. So as expected for majority of our customers, it was something new to them. They were mostly curious about what it is and what it's for. However, it came out as a surprise, so that there were quite a handful who actually already knew it, how it's supposed to work, and were actually asking how they can purchase them. So which we never would have known if we didn't launch this, right? So, and it only goes to show that probably the world that we're preparing for seems to be getting closer, or even probably already here. In terms of our competitors, because ever since I don't think I have much to say about them, because ever since we've started our digital transformation journey, we started to focus more on our customers and our mission. And we learned that at some point, everyone will be your partner instead of a competitor. Because, with all the challenges that we're facing right now, and it's all the changes, you'll realize that these are challenges that, not one institution can handle. So not one institution can solve.
It's an inspired approach, and I think very appropriate in this new sort of peer-to-peer world. Yeah, I also understand you were very instrumental in UnionBank's launch of the Bitcoin ATM. What's been the impact of that so far?
So I've always been very proud of this project. Well, not only because I was the one that led that project, but really because of the things that it has done for the bank, as well as for the customers and ourselves, our employees. So during that time, we found out that our customers are already starting to dabble in cryptocurrency, Bitcoins. I guess much earlier than most of us in the bank, but a lot of them are not really fully aware of what it is, how it works, what the risks are. And at the same time, we noticed that bank employees then were also prepared to address customers' queries about the topic. But we knew that some of our customers are now transacting basic financial services in crypto exchanges that offer cryptocurrency initially. So with the switch, starting to happen because of their curiosity to transact in crypto. So we also realized that, if and when the world turned upside down and everyone, wanted to just do crypto, the bank doesn't have the skills even or the process in place to operate these kinds of services for our customers, or let alone, process virtual currency related transactions. So the main objective really of that project was it did not include potential revenues, to be honest. But really it was for the bank to learn and hedge against potential disruption. So I always liken it to, buying a call option to the future. So it was surprising though that, we were able to generate some revenues. So the numbers are relatively small, of course, relative to the entire bank's income. So it's dwarfed by the bank's income. But this product, was self-sustaining it in its own way. But more significant to the bank was the upskilling and retooling that happened in the bank as a result of it. So from branch to operations to accounting, legal, tax, risk, etc., because we worked in squads then. So it became an opportunity for everyone to learn new things and be better equipped with the skills of the future. And this, of course, paved the way for quicker implementation of other relevant digital projects, such as recently what I've mentioned earlier, the stablecoin, PHX, and other blockchain-based payment projects. So we have all the support that we needed already in the bank to be able to launch that faster. So that, key learnings and developments done for Bitbox contributed to the development and quicker implementation of these projects. From a commercial angle and the business angle, sorry, I'm taking time here because this is one of my favorite projects. So we also see increased queries and interests coming, not just from the retail side, but corporations, foreign banks, fintechs, and tech companies who suddenly want to collaborate and do business with the bank. So mentioning that, UBP is known to be a leader in digital, quoting that, you even have your own Bitcoin ATM in the initial conversations. So, their queries are not really for crypto, but standard banking products to support their own digital journey. So we became part of their own digital journey as well, by getting invitations for us to be key speakers in their learning programs, which they arrange also for their employees. So, we've gotten to know our customers better in the process, and this cemented our bond with them and our lead in the financial market industry in terms of our digital agenda. So we feel that, this one small Bitcoin ATM is true innovation for the banking industry. And, as someone running that project, it really involved breaking barriers, creating tension to deliver something that changes the game, that results to eventually meaningful progress. So it required a change in our operating system and adopting a new mindset. So creating an environment of now why not instead of why, which is very different like years back. So one that is, more open to learning new skills. And then clearly this is not a traditional product, definitely one that is too controversial, especially for a bank and a regulated institution. But, we braved doing it because we believed in the purpose of the project. So the typical use case then are people who send low value cash funds to their relatives abroad, who have just recently moved and don't have a bank account, for example, there yet, and needed initial support for initial living expenses from their loved ones here, or to convert, small cash remittances received abroad from tuition payment. So we've been called a crypto-friendly bank because of it. But the truth is, the focus then of the bank wasn't actually crypto. It was really our customers. So, these use cases have always been about serving people, improving lives, and both for our customers as well as our employees.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, you've done a great job of putting this customer-centric sort of point of view is pretty powerful. I mean, interesting when you described it, the PHX rather, was really about solving 7,100 islands, and you can't, how do you get to a branch, or how do you support that many branches? You've solved a particular problem with UnionBank there. We also see Philippines broadly, basically, as one of the leaders in terms of adoption of cryptocurrencies. What's driving that adoption in the retail space, and in cryptocurrency specifically, and other digital assets?
Yeah, so the Philippines' first venture into Bitcoin were primarily to explore it as a transfer of value. So this makes like perfect sense when one considers that one of the pillars of our economy really are, our Filipino brothers, working abroad as overseas workers, and Filipinos working for foreign companies in the business process outsourcing industry. So remittances still comprise an enormous amount of our annual economic flow. And this is despite the pandemic, we've seen that. But this comes with, hefty fees, the usual. So Bitcoin has held an immediate appeal for Filipinos because of its ability to provide an alternative way of remitting money. So these aspects, allowed Filipino developers and entrepreneurs to envision a future where they could offer a service that greatly cuts down on the costs of these payments by incorporating that into their remittance process. So hence, I think the proliferation also of crypto exchanges. Another important use case is that it provided Filipinos with a way to experience investing, without having to shell out a large amount, because of its, innate property or ability of crypto to be offered in fractional units. So they had that experience of being able to invest and see what happens to your money after. So the pandemic has also been a game changer. So I might be stating the obvious here for everyone, but this has accelerated the use of cryptocurrency. The introduction of, for example, play to earn has been recently become one of the biggest stories of adoption of blockchain technology here in the Philippines. And institutions are starting to see this as well from their own customers, and how they are becoming now more crypto literate or more crypto curious, as they know that at some point, similar to how the Facebooks, the Instagrams, the Grabs have changed customer expectations, the same customers will now start to demand the same seamlessness, same frictionless kind of service provided by the cryptocurrency industry across different products. So at the same time, they would need help to help their customers navigate this and enjoy this in a much safer way. And hence, this now brings back renewed interest of institutions and the momentum to explore digital assets. So that institutional version of cryptocurrency. So that's how we see it now.
Yeah. Interesting. And how do you think, given the range of different types of investments there are now in crypto, as you mentioned, that go from layer ones all the way to play to earn, and just about any use case in between now. How do you think kind of investment, this new investment kind of class of clients, how will their investment portfolios evolve? Will they still look at traditional assets, equities, bonds, or is this a future we're looking at that everything's a crypto asset?
Yeah, so I still believe that even if consumer behavior continues to evolve from here, I think portfolio theory will still hold. So it's always going to be, a function of risk return for me relative to your overall portfolio. So if we're talking about crypto assets, cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ether, my view is that, so long as the volatility remains at the higher end of the spectrum, I guess portfolio allocation would still be relatively small. However, unlike before, I've noticed that, I think it will now become more a staple in everyone's investment portfolio. So it could be just a small amount, but it's always going to be there as it provides significant diversification benefits. So now what's interesting though is in the area of digital assets, so which could cover, not just cryptocurrency, but blockchain-based traditional bonds and equities using blockchain technology. So this is an entirely different story because it could be bigger depending on how, technology in the capital market space would evolve.
I mean, given all the exciting innovation you've done here, I have to ask about, you have the Blockchain Center of Excellence at UPP. I'd love to hear more about what that is, how it's grown over time, and what your plans are going forward.
Okay, so the bank's digital transformation and journey was actually less about tech, but more about people. So part of the plan was to provide an opportunity for people inside the bank to learn. And one of the key pillars we said our people should learn was blockchain. So the Blockchain Center of Excellence, this was a dedicated unit in the bank, was formed to further blockchain research and experimentation, and to drive and promote blockchain use cases across the bank. So we've initially, during the first years, we've conducted blockchain 101s, giving people an opportunity not just to learn, but to also ask questions. That included also launching game-changing POCs and pilots across multiple use cases. But going back to mindset, the culture of openness and collaboration when learning about blockchain was crucial in pushing the teams to look beyond what blockchain is on the surface. So for a year since its establishment, the Blockchain Center of Excellence now sits under a group called Blockchain and API Business Group. So it's a business group now as the bank slowly transitions from pilots and POCs to commercialization. So now the focus has shifted towards a more sustainable business model to be able to deliver what we've learned, these financial solutions that cater to new customer needs and the demand for new experiences and products.
How will that fit into the bank's kind of broader innovation strategy?
So, well, as mentioned earlier, it was our hedge to the future. Yeah, it was a natural evolution in our digital transformation journey that essentially allowed us to build not just capabilities, but the skills of the future. So it completes our digital to the core promise, and as I've mentioned, innovating end from end. And we're slowly actually seeing the benefit of doing this early, as we saw that it gave birth to a number of groundbreaking innovations. Essentially that allowed us to bring more value to our customers and further our Tech Up Pilipinas advocacy.
So when I look at basically the pace of innovation you guys are driving in this space, particularly crypto and digital assets, it's obviously light speed compared to many other jurisdictions or banks in many other jurisdictions. What's the reaction and the support you get from the regulators in the Philippines?
Yeah, so as you've mentioned, your regulations play a vital role in the life cycle of any new or emerging technology. So I can say that our regulators really value innovation and its role in financial inclusion. So I believe that our regulatory framework, as well as, I guess, as with all the other countries, it's still at an early stage and it's still evolving as technology and our customers evolve. But I admire, I guess, the resolve of our regulators here in terms of its role in promoting financial inclusion and pushing for the Sustainable Development Goals agenda. It's not easy to regulate the crypto industry, for example, because of its innate characteristics. It's totally different from how we have set up the financial system, basically. But you see the effort and their openness to support innovation in this space, especially for use cases that advance inclusive prosperity and the growth of the economy. Of course, provided that that the consumer's right to protection, it remains safeguarded. So for the BSP or central bank, for example, while they have policies that allow for this, they also provide warning advisories on cryptocurrency to ensure that consumers are aware of the risks that come with it. So they have stringent, and they have also very stringent rules for and policies for those that want to offer this service.
Maybe cover a slightly different angle now. Maybe talk about the technology specifically. I mean, given all these implementations you've done, what are the technical considerations and challenges when it comes to operating digital assets? What especially given we've just said you operate in a highly regulated environment with all the consumer protections, etc.
Yeah, of course. Here the biggest consideration is whether you even have the skills to evaluate or operate this new technology in the first place, and the framework at which this technology can be deployed, and it's not limited to what your internal policies, but of course the regulations, regulatory environment that you can operate it in. And in terms of the biggest challenge, I guess it's that everything is not just new to you, but that it's sometimes also contradicting, as mentioned earlier, to how things had been established and run for decades. So, example would be like for a bank to offer their clients the ability to do self-custody, for example, of their investments already, right, contradicts to our long-standing assumption that customers go to the banks or brokers because the bank brokers, they act as their custodian typically, and that no one would ever think of doing it themselves in the first place. But that's not the story now, right? So for as long as we maintain the same assumptions, it will be very difficult to think about technological considerations and operations of digital assets, because the longer you hold to these assumptions, the slower you learn and the less open you become to learning it. So usually the more difficult part is actually really getting to that point of deciding whether or not you should operate digital assets in the first place. So, but once you're past that, it becomes easier, because if the resolve is there, you will realize that you have very talented people in the organization who just happen to learn fast and adapt fast across functions, and that you are now also more open to working with partners for essentially capabilities that you don't have.
Well, on that point, I was going to ask actually the partner question. I mean, how do you prioritize building things internally versus partnering in the market, and what are the key aspects of choosing partners?
Yeah, so it's case to case for us. So essentially, crypto tech evaluation and the bank, it's similar to how we evaluate tech in general or partners in general. So it goes through an independent and rigorous process that includes evaluating whether to build in-house, to buy or partner, or to do a combination of all three, because sometimes it's possible, or depending on how complex it is. So here, in-house solutions are compared to external solutions and evaluated in terms of a set of criteria that covers, I guess, commercial, time to market, risks, reputation in the industry, among others.
I don't normally kind of have a sales plug, but I have to ask, given that, UBP recently announced a partnership with METACO and IBM around our platform, how does that fit into your strategy?
Well, essentially, so both METACO and IBM are no strong and trusted names in the industry. This is really crucial for our strategy of building the bank's capabilities in preparation for the future of banking. Of course, it's, we're in the business of trust. And of course, it's very important that we trust the partners that we work with. So institutional grade vetted by partners are, of course, on top of the list. And it typically, of course, will want long-standing relationships. And we've had one, of course, with IBM. And of course, we're looking to have one with METACO as well.
Excellent. And what are the use cases you're looking there for? So crypto custody and trading, I understand, is kind of a starting point.
Well, I guess here my only answer would be whatever our customers need. So, both present and the future, because as we have learned, especially after the pandemic, anything is possible. Nothing is fixed. One day it could be tokenization. The next day it could be something else. So everything could change. Hence our, continued focus on the customers and a great deal of effort in terms of finding out what's happening out there, even beyond the space that we traditionally operate in. So we just, continuously try to identify and build the capabilities to service them.
I'd be curious to ask, because DeFi is obviously something that we look at as potentially kind of reinventing kind of the banking score stack. I understand the client question, but how do you look at that from a technical perspective, the whole DeFi evolution in the market?
Yeah, I think it's very relevant. It's actually first principles thinking, right? And so if you have the technology essentially to have that available and the customers want that kind of experience, I think everyone should look at it and look into it. So we're not used to having a decentralized governance. We're not used to having decentralized systems. But at some point, if we essentially look deeper into it, you'd see a lot of benefits. What that benefits us and the customers as well. So there are ways at which banks can participate in the decentralized space, I guess, but that will take time because it's more than it's more than a private institution decision. Also, it's a function of political regulatory framework. So yeah, but it is a very interesting space, and of course we have our eyes set on it.
Well, clearly everybody should be watching this space because I think you're breaking new ground in the banking space globally. So it's Kathy, it's been super exciting having you on here as our first guest for 2022. Thanks for your time today. Do you have anything else you want to comment on before we wrap up? Anything else?
Yeah, well, of course, we want to thank you, Seamus, and then thank you, METACO. Thank METACO as well. So to our guests, I guess, thank you for your time also being here. We are always excited to represent UnionBank of the Philippines and our Blockchain Center of Excellence, and happy also to share our stories of transformation. I'm hoping that it inspires more collaborations towards finding solutions to improve our lives, of course, not just in the aspect of banking or financial services, but beyond. And I guess also to our audience who are interested to know more about blockchain and how this story has evolved in the Philippines. And my boss, Henry Aguda, and former colleague, attorney Nathan, and I have a book, have written a book. And if you want, it's available in Amazon and Kindle as well. It's called Opening the Archipelago, the Blockchain Story in the Philippines. So if you want to know more about the story of UnionBank, it's all there. So yeah.
And I wasn't aware of that. I'll check that out myself.
Okay.
Great, Kathy. Thanks for joining us today. And thanks everybody for joining METACO Talks again. Join us again in a couple of weeks for our next installment. And until then, have a great time. Thanks for joining.